Bruce Cockburn. He has a new record out called Crow Ignites. The season put aside some of his wordplay to focus on his guitar work. The album is entirely instrumental. It is an incredible listen. It's out everywhere on September 20th. And right now, I'm thrilled to have Bruce Cockburn with me in the studio. Hi, Bruce.
Hi.
Nice to see you again.
Nice to be here with you. Nice to see you, too.
Is that a Collings?
Yes, it is.
Beautiful guitar.
Yeah, I've had this for a long time. For a while, I didn't use it much, but it kind of came back around. And
I see it as a bluegrass guitar. I'm a little surprised to see you play it. Maybe that's just the way I think about
I started out with a D18. It was the same style of guitar, but I slightly miss the cutaway that my managers have. But I just like the sound of this guitar a lot.
Are you fussy about buying guitars?
I don't think I'm fussy. If there were no limitations on it, I'd have even more than I have, and it would be even more too many than I have, because I have too many now.
Are you particular then? Are you particular about the kind of guitars that you get?
Well, I just look for interesting things. Acoustic guitars I have good acoustic guitars, and I have my Linda Manzers that I've been using for years, and I really like those. The Collings I bought in the early 90s in L.A., and because it just sounded so great. And I thought, this will be a great thing to have in the studio. At the time, I didn't have a way of amplifying it. Subsequently, it's got electronics in it, so it can be put through a PA. But and we've been using it actually on these last few gigs. But I have a guitar that was given to me on the occasion of the Canadian Songwriters Hall of Fame event last September, basically, and. It's a Boucher guitar, and I wasn't familiar with the company at all, but they gave several of us one of their guitars, and it's a beautiful little thing. But I don't have a way to amplify that either, so it's at home. But as I get older, my hands like a smaller neck.
That's the next question I had. What kind of neck are you looking for? Because you do so much work. I was wondering if you need a bigger neck.
Well, the original Manzer that I had Linda make for me has a fairly wide neck. Which is good for finger picking, but like I say, as you know, it gets harder on the left hand with that arrangement. So I like a smaller guitar. I get a lot of mileage out of my dobro because it's quite compact.
I heard a story that the first guitar you played came out of your grandmother's attic. Is that right?
Yes, I played is an overstatement. It's the first guitar I had, and as soon as I went for my first lesson. The teacher said, "Well, I don't think you're going to get far with that." And he persuaded my mother to buy something better.
What was it? It was just an old Sears guitar or something, was it?
Yeah, something like that. It had been set up for Hawaiian music, so it had the high nut, and it was meant for laying on your lap and playing with the steel. And so I didn't know that. I didn't know anything about guitars. I just tried to play rock and roll on it, and it didn't come out too well. but I. My parents bought me a K archtop, which was, it'd be a classic now if I still had it. But back then it was kind of a budget guitar, but it was decent. So that's what I mostly learned on.
What's the first guitar you really loved?
The Martin 0018 that I had. That was the first good acoustic guitar that I had. I had a couple of good electrics, Gibson electrics that I liked, but. For acoustic guitar, I had a cheap classical guitar for a while, and that didn't suit the way I was trying to play at all. And but I got hold of this 0018, and it lasted a long time. It ended up in the hands of Mose Scarlett, and the late Mose Scarlett and he used it for the rest of his life.
Then I know that guitar very well. I've seen Mose play that guitar. I saw Mose play that guitar an awful lot.
Yeah. It was a good guitar.
Yeah, it certainly was. I'm happy I get to nerd out with you about guitars. I got permission from my producer to nerd out with you about guitars. So
Good,
this is fun.
That's fun.
So what was the first song you learned at your guitar lesson? Do you remember that?
Oh, it might have been "Please Help Me, I'm Fallen." It was some country song that I had no empathy with at all.
Right.
But the teacher was, starting with something simple, and I already knew how to read music. On other instruments, I'd taken a year of clarinet and 3 years of trumpet before I got around to the guitar. So, I had a sense of the theory, and it was a matter of translating it to the guitar, which was excruciating at first. The trumpet if you play it a lot, your lip gets sore. You know, when you're learning to play guitar, especially if you don't have a really easy one to play, it's quite painful on the fingers.
That makes sense to me, because I see you as a guitar player, and this is just me, by the way, but I see you as a guitar player not beholden to shapes. You know what I mean? Like when I play the guitar, I'm kind of, I'm stuck in first position for a lot of it. And when I go up, it's always in kind of those normal positions. But I see you as not necessarily beholden to shapes. I see you approach the guitar often like it's a piano. You can kind of play anything you want on it. So it makes sense that you had a lot of theory, a lot of music before you picked up the guitar.
Yeah, well, I had that before, and I had a lot of it after as well. Like I studied theory through high school, and then I went to music school for a couple of years to studying composition. So
you know what I mean by that?
A fairly heavy dose of it. Yes, I do. I know exactly what you mean. It's a shrewd observation, or at least a clear one. Because one of the interesting features of the guitar, as distinct from other instruments, is that you can play the same note in a whole bunch of different places, which means you can play other notes with it, depending on where you play that note, in different ways, right? So that's something that I've tried to make use of. And I just learned a lot about harmonic movement in the course of those studies, which I was fairly poor at. I mean, it wasn't like I was a great student.
You weren't a good music student, really?
Not really. I was too lazy and too unfocused. But I learned a lot just by osmosis and hanging out with all these people that were really good.
I'll tell you what's blowing my mind. I don't know if you know this. I might have mentioned it to you last time we talked, but I hosted the Ottawa Folk Festival one year when you played, and you were on at like 9 or something like that. It was you and Anne, a cellist.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. I can't remember her name right now. And you were on at 9. I think you were there at 5 in the backstage playing guitar for like 4 hours leading up to the set. So for me to hear you say I was lazy, I was unfocused seems unbelievable to me, because you're an incredibly disciplined musician.
Well, I've learned a little of that over the years.
Yeah.
But it takes a while to kind of sink into what you're doing. But back in the day, I didn't know that. You just go in. But at music school at Berkeley, the composition classes were divided into the members of a big band, basically, right? So you'd write arrangements for the class and then bring them in and they would be played. So you really got to kind of hear and see graphically the effect of what you were writing. And that hasn't had a profound effect on my songwriting in any direct way, but there's an attitude built into that kind of informs what I do a lot. So, I don't like being locked into shapes and in particular chord things. I mean, sometimes you get a lot of mileage out of that. There's power there that's a choice to use. But I discovered kind of while I was at Berkeley that I really didn't like chords very much. I really liked music that didn't have any chords better than any other kind.
You mean music with a lot of maybe some harmonic movements, maybe some notes?
No, I mean like Indian music or Arabic music, where they just don't pay any attention at all to chords.
Right.
The architecture of the music, rather than being a bunch of notes sort of held up against each other to sort of see how they interact. The architecture is more like a moving melody over top of a bass drone. So instead of these blocks of things moving around, you have single lines, but it's always measured against a single note that you're playing, right? So, or that someone else is playing, as in the case of that music. So I came quite heavily under the influence of that stuff, and I don't know how to play Indian music, but I've always liked the fact that there's a space that a kind of psychic space that music creates that is unlike any other, except for the classical Scottish bagpipe music, pibroch, which is hypnotic and like that, but much simpler.
I love any sort of drone-based traditional music. I'm really, really into. Even like a lot of old, like West Virginia fiddling, where they play a lot of open tunings and they keep that low G going for a long time.
There's Norwegian fiddling like that too. It's really beautiful.
I love it too. So I can hear people yelling at the radio right now. Yeah. That's fine, Tom. Can Bruce please play a song?
They don't know what they're saying, do they? Be careful what you wish for, folks. The talking might be better at this time of day. But
you're gonna play an old one.
Well, yeah, we were talking about what to do, and it was suggested that I do something old and
something borrowed, something blue.
Well, a little of that. Yeah, there's some of that in everything I do. I think borrowed and blue for sure, But this year is basically the 50th anniversary of the recording of my first album. It didn't come out till 50 years ago next year, but we recorded it in the fall of '69, and so here we are, 50 years later. So it seemed sensible to do something old. This isn't off the first album, though. I don't really currently have anything under my hands from that album, but it's from one of the early ones.
What is it?
And it seems kind of apropos of the times. Sorry, I'm going to just...
What song is it, Bruce?
It's called When the Sun Goes Nova.
Yeah, man.
When the sun goes nova and the world turns over, I don't want to be alone. So honey, come on home. If you're in a valley when the dam breaks pally, you're going to feel alone. So honey, come on home. When you're on the bum and the policemen come, if you lose your grip or your trousers rip, I'll be waiting, dear. When you're on the bum and the policemen come, if you lose your grip or your trousers rip, I'll be waiting, dear. When the sun goes nova and the world turns over, I don't want to be alone. So honey, come on home. Honey, won't you come on home? Honey, won't you come on home? Honey, won't you come on home?
I was not expecting that at all. That's Bruce Cockburn with When the Sun Goes Nova. Bruce does Tin Pan Alley. Bruce does rags.
Well, I started out doing rags a lot.
Like Stephen Grossman and those guys, that kind of...
No, I just tried to learn Jelly Roll Morton songs the way he played them. I mean, he played the piano, so there was a lot of translating involved.
Yeah.
But just that music in general. I've did a gig with Stefan Grossman one time. He's a great guitar player in Italy, actually. Stefan Grossman and John Renborn and I did a show, and it was a lot of fun. But he wasn't somebody. I mean, I was aware of him being there, but I listened to the old guys.
Yeah, and who's I can't remember. My brain is falling right now. Like I said, the guy, him and Dave Van Ronkel, they all learned from Reverend.
Reverend Gary Davis.
Yeah, Reverend Gary Davis. Were you into him?
Yes, I was, and blues in general. I mean, Mississippi John Hurt, Mance Lipscomb, Reverend Gary Davis, all that kind of stuff. And it was much later that I discovered Blind Blake, who was really the archetype that all these guys were kind of playing.
But I don't see you as a blues guy often. You know?
Well, I'm kind of white.
Yeah. No, you.
but I mean, you know, the blues is a pretty universal music. I'm being facetious when I say it that way. But yeah, no, I along with, I had a bunch of strains going at the same time, along with the jazz that I was really interested in and kind of imagined I would someday play. Went this interest in folkier things and. Especially blues, like the country blues from early times. Not so much Chicago stuff, but you know, and all these other things. Every time I heard something new that excited me, I wanted to do something like it too. You know, and so all this stuff kind of blended together.
So as we mentioned, it's been 50 years since the first record. Like, was the plan to be a touring performer? Like, was that the plan? Was that the dream?
There was no dream and no plan. It was, I mean, I guess you could call it a dream that I thought I imagined it, you know, spending my life with a guitar, but that's as far as I took it. I had no clear image of where I was going to go. When I went to Berkeley, I thought I was going to get a music degree, and then I didn't know what would happen after that. My parents liked the idea of a degree because it was, quote, something to fall back on, unquote, which an artist should not have. But nonetheless, that was their plan.
Yeah.
But you know, halfway through there, I kind of realized that it wasn't my plan, and that I should be somewhere else. And I didn't know where, but not there. So I left and went back to Ottawa and joined a band and started writing songs.
How'd they feel about that?
They were worried. They were very good about it to me, but I know they were worried for a few years in there where I didn't seem to be doing anything.
Right.
You know, playing in bands that weren't very good and so on. But I was writing and learning some stuff. And at the end of the 60s, I'd sort of played in enough bands that weren't quite it for me, and I decided I was going to go solo.
When do you think they calmed down? Like, when do you think you did something that made them go like, okay, Bruce,
when they saw me on stage at the National Arts Center. That, you know, it took a few years.
That must have been meaningful to you.
It was meaningful to them. I didn't know anything about it until decades later. I mean, nobody ever talked about that stuff.
Yeah.
They said they were proud of me and everything, but you know, I remember saying in that sort of 60s period, or maybe even after, I think I was doing the solo thing, but my parents had some people over, and my dad and I were standing there talking to one of his friends, and the friend said, "Oh, you know, what are you up to these days?" to me. And I said, "Oh, you know, I'm not really doing anything." And my dad sort of leaped into the breach and said, "Well, you're practicing a lot," you know. And I was, and okay, yeah, you're right, I am. But it didn't seem to me like that amounted to anything.
Yeah.
That certainly nothing that meant anything to anyone else.
Yeah.
But it was comforting for him to be able to say that. But you know, when things picked up after the first album came out, and you know, a lot of stuff started happening fast, and so they got more relaxed with it all.
When I think about the early 70s in Canadian music, I can't help but think about like a bunch of different people. I think about like Leonard Cohen. I think about Gordon Lightfoot, like Neil Young, Buffy St. Marie. You kind of the youngster in that group of people that I think about. Like, am I onto something here? Did you guys ever all run into each other, or?
there certainly wasn't a scene like that involved me. I was acquainted with some of the people because I used to hang out at Lebu in Ottawa all the time. I was kind of, it was like a second home, so I could come and go as I pleased, and I'd hang out there, and people would be doing their sound checks or just coming in with their suitcase or whatever, and I'd be sitting there and we'd chat. So I met Joni Mitchell. I met Neil Young. When he in between things he was doing, he came and played a week at this club to kind of figure out what he was going to be doing. I guess he was in the process of putting Crazy Horse together, but he hadn't quite settled on the people. And I had a couple of conversations with him. He was complaining that his Cooper Mini was too small to be legal in California, which he was quite bitter about. but he played these great songs. Really, he's a powerful performer and was then too. I kind of met everybody that came through there, but not to hang with.
Right.
Just to say hi, how are you doing, and casual chat.
See, right. In my mind, there's like a card. There's a card that you get. And you're allowed to enter this one room, and you guys all go in. There's Gord and there's.
Well, yeah, I mean, there probably was that for the people that actually were socially inclined and were not based in Ottawa.
Right.
But Ottawa had a very active and thriving music scene with a lot of good people in it, but there seemed to be a kind of glass ceiling there, like that if you're going to expand creatively and and certainly in terms of public notoriety, you had to get out. And people that were based in Toronto or New York or LA were obviously going to be going to have access to all kinds of contacts that weren't there in Ottawa.
I was going to ask a question, but I think I might have the answer to it, because I asked you, was there ever a plan? You said no dream and no plan. And when I look back, you put out an album essentially every 2 years. Not including live albums and compilations and singles. And all I could think was there's this incredible work ethic, and I was wondering where that work ethic comes from. But it seems like it just comes from a love of music. Yeah,
I got a pretty good dose of Victorian work ethic as a kid. You were supposed to. If you're going to do something, you're supposed to get it done right, and you're supposed to, learn to do what you were doing properly. I was surrounded by people who took that view of things, and my teachers at Berkeley were like that. The teachers I had in public school and high school were like that, and my parents were like that. So, my dad was not very interested in me singing because he didn't think I was as much of a singer, but he liked the guitar. My mom kept telling me that I should sing because people who played guitar sang. And I should do it too, and stuff. But really, there was the idea that if you're going to do something, learn to do it properly.
Right.
Was inculcated in me at an early age, and never really left. I guess I've like I said, I am lazy by nature, though. I do the work because I don't want to get caught out, not having done it. I don't want to get up in front of an audience and screw up.
Right.
So I do the work.
Alan Doyle from Great Big Sea told me he lives by the mantra, I can't know that I'm the smartest person in the room, but I can know that I'm the most prepared person in the room.
Yeah. Well, I'm hesitant to engage in comparisons. So I don't compare myself to the other people in the room any more than I absolutely have to, because I get nervous if I do that. So, but yeah,
you can't control.
You want to be prepared.
You can't control anything but how prepared you are.
Yeah, I guess I'm a kind of survivalist at heart. I'm a prepper.
You got a bunch of Gatorade and canned beans down in the basement. Well, how are you doing for someone who works this hard? How are you doing as you get older? Not to be indelicate, but how are you?
There's nothing delicate about getting older, believe me. Yeah, and it's an issue.
Yeah.
The hands don't work as well. I'm getting away with it so far, but there are issues that I don't try to predict or second guess where it's going to go. I just try to keep doing it and I'll keep doing it as long as I can. But at some point, I guess time and space will conspire to make it impossible.
And you'll have to take your first ever vacation.
Possibly. That's a nice way to think about it.
You're gonna play.
I was kind of imagining death, but vacation sounds good.
To quote someone in the early 70s, isn't death just a great vacation, man?
Might have been then.
Yeah, maybe so.
I don't know. I got a feeling there's some challenges there.
Maybe so. Peter Frampton said to me recently that he found out he has a condition where he can't play guitar very soon. I can't remember what the name of it is. It's a bit of a rare condition. It's all going to kind of start shutting down soon. So he's recording as much as he possibly can. He's putting out all the albums he ever wanted to ever put out. He's getting them all out within like a year period because he just wants to say everything he needed to say.
No, more power to him. I mean, that's a brave way to approach that, and I certainly respect it. I don't feel that kind of crunch at this point, and I don't know if I'd respond to it if I did, because I feel like I've kind of done a lot of stuff already, and I look forward to doing more, but only if it's a natural thing that's waiting there to be done, And I don't know, because I'm not a planner. I don't know what that would be.
A prepper, not a planner.
Yeah.
Can you? You're going to play another song for us now.
Yeah, I got a tune for this. So,
yeah. Okay. This is a hit, right?
Okay. I think I'm there.
I'm very excited. I do love this song.
Here we go. Sun's up, looks okay, the world survives into another day, and I'm thinking about eternity. Some kind of ecstasy got a hold on me. I had another dream about lions at the door. They weren't half as frightening as they were before, but I'm thinking about eternity. Some kind of ecstasy got a hold on me. Walls, windows, trees, waves coming through. You be in me and I'll be in you, together in eternity. Some kind of ecstasy got a hold on me. Up among the firs where it smells so sweet, or down in the valley where the river used to be, I got my mind on eternity. Some kind of ecstasy got a hold on me, and I'm wondering where the lions are. Wondering where the lions are. Whoa, wondering where the lions are. Ooh yeah, wondering where the lions are. Ooh yeah, yeah, wondering where the lions are. Wondering where the lions are. Yeah, 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 yeah. Huge orange flying boat rises off a lake. 1,000-year-old petroglyphs doing a double take, pointing a finger at eternity. And I'm sitting in the middle of this ecstasy. Young men marching, helmet shining in the sun, polished and precise like the brain behind the gun should be. They got me thinking about eternity, but some kind of ecstasy got a hold on me. And I'm wondering where the lions are. Wondering where the lions are. Whoa, wondering where the lions are. Ooh, yeah, yeah, wondering where the lions are. But I'm wondering where the lions are. Wondering where the lions are. Wondering where the lions are. Whoa, whoa, yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Freighters on the knot on the surface of the bay. One of these days we're gonna sail away. Gonna sail into eternity. Some kind of ecstasy got a hold on are. Whoa, wondering where the lions are. Ooh, yeah, yeah, wondering where the lions are. Ba-do-do-do-da-da-da-da-da-da-da. Wondering where the lions are, yeah. Wondering where the lions are, yeah. Wondering where the lions are. Wondering where the lions are. Wondering where the lions are. Wondering where the lions are.
That's Bruce Cockburn doing Wondering Where the Lions Are. I'm Tom Power, the luckiest gentleman in the world, and this is Q. So this has been fun talking to you a little bit about music and your life up to this point. I want to talk to you about something that I noticed when I was at the Songwriters Hall of Fame show with you a little bit while ago, and you were honored that night, as well as a couple other musicians, including Neil Young. And William Prince came on stage, and I believe he performed Stolen Land. And it made me think a little bit about how, currently in this country, we're having a lot of conversations around truth and reconciliation and, reconciling with the treatment of Indigenous folks in this country. And you've been writing about this for a very, very long time. I mean, long before this kind of current moment we're having. And it made me think, was there a specific moment, maybe in your youth or when you were writing music that made you maybe a bit of awakening or a moment where you realized, maybe I have something to say here, or this is something that needs to be addressed through my music?
Are you thinking about Aboriginal issues in particular, or anything? Because
I think Indigenous Aboriginal issues.
Yeah, because that came a little bit later. I mean, there was sort of fertile ground for that issue and others to fall on, but that came just from kind of a basic liberal upbringing. But I mean, it was thought that it was appropriate to pay attention to what was going on around us and so on. But nobody in my family was, certainly not my forebears were what you'd call an activist or anything. But so all I knew about Aboriginal culture was Tonto, really, until I went out west the first time in 1970 and started meeting my peers that happened to be from First Nations. And I had no idea what they had grown up with. I mean, well, I guess it's not fair to say I had no idea, but I had a very sketchy notion of what it was to be Native in North America. I mean, I knew that the Western movies were not the truth, but I, in terms of empathizing with a person, I mean, it was meeting Shingus and Tom Jackson and people like that. And hearing stories about how they'd grown up in contrast to how I'd grown up, that started me thinking about those things. And you can travel all over the West and you can find, especially back in the 70s, but it's still there, really overt racism directed against that population. You can go to museums and you see all this beautiful stuff that was sort of looted from the culture before the culture was subjected to attempts to destroy it. And there's just a heartbreaking poignancy to that prompted a song like Red Brother, Red Sister from the mid-'70s. Gavin's Woodpile talks about mercury poisoning on the English River at Grassy Narrows, and that's, that's a long time ago that I wrote that song, that it was, that issue had come to the fore, and people were comparing it to Minamata disease, and which it is, and Minamata disease is called that after a Japanese fishing village that was that fell victim to massive industrial poisoning. And so the fact that, this was outrageous in the 70s that nobody was doing anything about this. All this time later, and they still haven't done a damn thing about it. And that's even more outrageous. So, it's not going away. It's we're kind of past the point, for the most part, where we're just shooting Aboriginal people, but that happened too, and it happened in Canada, maybe in a different way than it happened in the States. It was less actual warfare and more just brutality, and theft, with murder involved. But we have that in our history, and we've got to do something to set it right.
What's your perspective on like being from outside of a culture? So, I mean, I should point out, if you don't know what Bruce Cockburn looked like, but as we mentioned earlier, you're a white guy. Like, what's your perspective on being outside of that culture and still singing about the issues from another culture?
Well, if you have a heart and a conscience, I mean, what's not to sing about?
Yeah.
I don't think that. I think certain kinds of statements need to be made by the people themselves, but I don't see why they shouldn't have allies, and I don't see why I shouldn't say what's in my heart to say, no matter what it's about. So that includes justice for Native people too.
Do you think artists have a responsibility to speak out about things? Like, do you think that artists have a responsibility, if they can, to sing and write and speak about these issues that are facing our world right now?
I think all people have a responsibility to leave their campsite better than they found it. That's the way we were taught it, at summer camp, in Algonquin Park. That, you just don't leave your crap around for other people to stumble over, and that applies to the progress of history as much as to the more local things. And so yeah, I mean, artists have a responsibility, but so does everybody else. It's just that artists also, kind of by definition, have a public voice. So. And we also, because most of us don't work 9 to 5, we have the opportunity to travel and perhaps be exposed directly to things that are out of reach of somebody that does work 9 to 5. But the responsibility is a general one.
Could I ask you to put on your headphones just for a quick second?
Yeah.
So I want to. You can just hold them up if you want.
Yeah.
I want to play a little clip right now. Just take a listen to this. I know.
Sarawak to Amazonas, Costa Rica to mangy BC hills, Cortez rhythm of falling timber. What kind of currency grows in these new deserts, these brand new floodplains? If a tree falls in the forest, does anybody hear?
That is Bruce Cockburn from 1988, his album Big Circumstance. That's If a Tree Falls. A song that's become a real environmental anthem. But my question is, when you write a song like that, are you hoping it will help bring about concrete change, or are you just writing about what's on your mind?
Well, you always hope, but I don't expect it to do any given song to do any measurable thing. Yeah, of course, I hope that people will be moved by what's in my heart and on my mind, and that they'll want to do something, but or that they'll want to support the people who are able to devote big chunks of their lives to addressing these kinds of problems. We can't all be David Suzuki, but we can all support him, for instance, right? But mostly the songs come from a personal response to something. I'm not thinking agenda. When I write a song like that, it's that particular song was occasioned by a radio documentary that I heard on one of the Toronto college stations. I don't remember which one, talking about the destruction of rainforests in Borneo, and I had never been in a tropical rainforest, but I'd been in rainforests in BC, and I kind of had a sense of what that would mean. But there were also, of course, that in the third world, when forests get destroyed, the people that live in them tend to be destroyed also, and so that was happening in Borneo, and it certainly happened all through Latin America, and so it just seemed there was a lot to say there, a lot to talk about, and the imagery was powerful. Like that, when you start thinking about it, I mean, the fact that basically all these, the degradation of the environment that we see around us is being done intentionally for money. There's some accidents in there too. I mean, we all have to live somewhere. There's too many people, and we make all this garbage and stuff like that. And those are real things. But the choices that are made. I mean, you get Mike Pompeo standing up and saying it's going to be great when the Arctic ice all melts because we'll be able to get at the oil. I mean, that's brain dead.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's not brain dead for him. He can get rich, and somebody, maybe he's got grown-up children who can get rich, but their children are going to pay a terrible price for that.
Well, I was just in the north. I was just in Nunavut in Iqaluit, and I had, Inuk hunters telling me, they're already unable to go out as far into the bay and hunt for walrus as they were last year. Like, we're already seeing the effects of climate change, of global warming. As someone who's been singing about these things since the 70s, how do you avoid getting cynical when it seems like nothing's changing, or do you?
No, I don't. I don't get cynical. I mean, I get annoyed, but I mean, I'm a bit of a skeptic when it comes to the likelihood of humanity actually fixing this stuff. But that doesn't mean you should give up on it. I think, the likelihood is that we're going to destroy ourselves, but we might not. And if we don't, let's hope that the survivors have something decent to live with when they survive. But we've known about this stuff for a long time. As you said, it's like, how long ago was it that the first robin showed up in Alaska? I mean, I remember reading about that in the paper, decades ago, and it was a sure sign then, that this trend was happening. There were other signs like it, but these. In the 70s, there were no. I don't remember there being ticks in Ontario, for instance. Right? That's changed. I watched kind of the. As far as I knew, anyway, there were no opossums and vultures and sort of things in Ontario either. But in the 90s, they started showing up. And well, that's because the climate's changing. The creatures that like to live in warm weather are coming further north. What do you think that means? It's not because they're running out of food in the south. And although people will start moving because of that, any day now, and actually to some extent are now, but there's sort of no percentage in being hopeless about it. It's I mean, if it's a done deal, then I suppose you could fritter away your life amusing yourself or something, if you can manage to do that in the face of what you think is coming. But really, I mean, otherwise you might as well just commit suicide, and I'm not into that.
You got a young kid, right?
Yeah, I have a 7-year-old daughter as well as a 43-year-old daughter.
Right. I mean, do you think about how you're going to talk to your daughter about that, your 7-year-old daughter, but or the life she's gonna have?
She already knows about it. She learns about it at school. Yeah. And they're giving them a pretty good perspective. She goes to a French immersion school in San Francisco, and she's getting a good education at the level that they're teaching at. I don't know if that quality will be sustained right through her school years, which in theory she could continue at that institution. But she's learning a lot, and I mean, San Francisco has I'm not sure if it's a good recycling program, but they have a very high-profile one. And we're all more or less required to compost things and recycle things. The system gets abused terribly because most people don't really know what can be recycled and what can't. Yeah. So you end up with food garbage in the recycling bin and stuff like that. But to the extent that it's able to be made to work, it's pretty good. But it puts the issues right in front of people, at least the issue of pollution like that, and of food waste and so on, energy waste. But we have wildfires in California, and there was a period last summer where you couldn't walk around the street without risking your health seriously because of the smoke in the air in San Francisco, which is hundreds of miles from the fires. But nonetheless was being inundated with heavy smoke.
It's an interesting time right now, and it was. I was curious as to why an instrumental album would be the output from you right now. Well, I'll ask it. Why?
What do you mean by that? I made an instrumental album because I felt like it.
Yeah,
That's the short answer. It just seemed like a good time to do that, not because of what's going on in the world, but just in terms of what I've been up to. But really, yeah, there's a lot to talk about, but there's also a lot of blather, and I don't know that adding more words to the blather is really going to have a very positive effect. A certain party that we're all aware of, unfortunately, gets far too much attention as it is, and I don't need to say more about him. But I mean, there are things that are certainly worth talking about. But the biggest one for me, in the short run, is the issue of a dialogue of some, or perhaps what would you call it, a multi-log or something that the increasing factionalization, especially in the U.S., is very threatening and to our collective future. So we need to find a way to talk to each other and hear each other out and actually, think past the name calling and stuff that's going on. I mean, the terms liberal and conservative in the States are pejorative, on one side or the other, right? You can't say those words without people getting their hackles up, and that's ridiculous. It's a measure of how great that gap has become between people who, let's say, people who are fearful and people who are hopeful, or people whose hopefulness is based on their fear and people whose hopefulness is based on the idea that you might actually be able to do something. And we're all fearful. I mean, anybody that thinks should be fearful in the current world, but you don't want to make stupid choices because of that. So, and unfortunately, we're seeing a lot of stupid choices on all sides of it. So, how do we get past that? I don't know that it's with words.
Yeah.
Music is a bonding agent.
It is.
And maybe there's something there.
So you're going to play a track from the new record?
I thought I would, and I got a tune for this one too. So.
Yeah.
Are you going to play with me on this?
Yeah, I can if you want.
Well, we could try it and see if it works. So the chorus thing is like a... And it just does that. I mean, the form would be a little bit of a jam and then the chorus and more jamming and then the chorus and more jamming and then the chorus. That's probably long enough.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, it's a good idea.
That's the cuckoo, right?
It'll work. Yeah. I love that style of banjo playing.
So then the riff in the chorus is what?
The riff is just like I do it a couple of times, and that's the chorus, and then at the end I'll do it 4 times.
Whenever you're ready.
Okay, let's just start it off with it.
Awesome. That was fun, man.
Fun,
Thank you.
yeah,
Thanks.
really.
That's very
Nice.
cool. That's Bruce Cockburn performing Blind Willie, and I got to frail along from his new album, Crow Ignites. That was fun, man. Thank you for that.
Thank you.
I can put that on the resume
There.
when I apply at Tim Hortons in a couple of years.
Likewise, I'm sure.
We'll see you there.
Yeah.
I got just a couple of just kind of closing questions here, and there might be a little rapid fire. But so like it's 50 years from your first album, and give me one of your favorite memories. Give me when you look back, what one sticks with you from 50 years in the music industry.
It's all a blur.
You got to have one, man. You got to have a flashbulb. Is it a concert? Is it a?
Well, I mean, on any one occasion, a different one's going to come up. But what? Well, I mean, just what comes to mind immediately is the first time I played Massey Hall. I was opening for Pentangle, and that was, I was pretty nervous, but I had considerable admiration for those people, and I did my set, and then I got to listen to them. It was pretty good.
Yeah.
And it worked out okay. People liked what I did. In that same general era, playing the main stage at Mariposa instead of Neil Young, who had a problem and couldn't get there or something, it was an amazing shot. I was blind with fear, but looking back on it, I can remember looking out at the audience and thinking, this is really, aside from being totally surreal, it's really great.
Mm.
Look at all these people, and they're all kind of smiling.
Mm.
They're not like throwing things or anything.
Yeah.
So and that put me in front of the Toronto audience, which was a great gift. So stuff like that come to mind. But I also think of all the travels that I've been privileged to be able to engage in, both recreational and development related and touring related. I mean, just all kinds of different places to go and reasons to be there. There's a lot of stuff to pull memories out of.
I want you to put the headphones on one last time, if you don't mind. Because
Okay.
I think part of this kind of legacy we're talking about is going to be the artists you've influenced, and I wanted to play this.
When your lover's in a dangerous time, lover's in a dangerous time. When your lover's in a dangerous time, lover's in a dangerous time.
So that's you and Stephen Page of Bare Naked Ladies performing your song "Lovers in a Dangerous Time" at a benefit for Music Without Borders. I couldn't find the year for it, but do you remember that?
I don't remember what year it was, but
Yeah.
I do remember doing it. Yeah, interesting. We did that a few times. There were times when it was the whole gang and I played together, and other times where it'd just be one or two of them, and we would do that.
That's the one that launched them, man. Like their cover of "Lovers in a Dangerous Time" was the one that got them their name out there.
Yeah, and it wasn't even on their album. It was on a so-called tribute album
To you.
to me,
Yeah.
right? And well, I mean, there were a lot of Toronto artists, good ones, saw fit to contribute songs to that record, but that was the one that got the attention on radio for sure.
Does that mean something to you too? I mean, I can tell even with the way you say it was something like a tribute album, I guess to me, which is, very Canadian. And
Well, I'm shuffling
down
and,
with- I know.
hum-
I'm Irish Catholic, Bruce. I get it, man. I can't, when people ask me how it's going, I kind of go, oh, well, it's, well, okay. Yeah. I kind of wish I had a problem. But
There's always one lurking.
Yeah.
You can be comfortable about that.
I'll take some of yours. I think that that must be meaningful to know that not only you've made your mark in other musicians, that other musicians going forward were influenced by you. That must mean something to you.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what to make of it really, but it's certainly complimentary, and where it will go. I mean, in 50 years, will anybody remember any of us? I don't know, but it's nice that. I mean, nice is a stupid word. It's gratifying and heartwarming, really, to have the music spread out, to have my music spread out in society, and that people think enough of it to want to sing it themselves. That's a great thing.
So I saved the hard question to last. So let's say Rumors of Glory, the Bruce Cockburn biopic comes out. The story of Bruce Cockburn's life in the movie theaters, your Walk the Line, your life's on screen. The credits roll, goes to black. What song is playing?
I might not have written that one yet. But, you could play any one. It depends on the tone of the movie. If the movie was true to life, they might play Night Train. If it's, kind of Hollywoodized, they might play Lovers in a Dangerous Time.
Yeah, but why Night Train? I feel like that's the true one.
When I wrote it, my life is a little bit different now, but when I wrote it, it felt like I had written a kind of personal manifesto, like my own particular state of the world observations, and I think it kind of still holds up as that, although I feel a bit more hopeful, generally speaking, than that song might suggest. But I think that kind of sums a lot of stuff up. Or if they wanted to get like maybe even a little hipper, if I can think of the name of the song. Whenever I try to think of the names of anything these days, they go away and then come back an hour later. But let me just. Well,
I'm sure Bernie will know it if you say
what
it.
The song
if
is.
you kind of say it.
Oh yeah, okay. So the song that they really should put there is "Tie Me at the Crossroads," which is a little bit of an sort of a couple of observations on fame and legacy. Tie me at the crossroads when I die. Hang me in the wind till I get good and dry. And the kids that pass can scratch their heads and say, "Who was that guy?" Tie me at the crossroads when I die. That would be a fitting end for a movie about my life, I think.
That sounds good to me. Nice to talk to you today, Bruce.
Likewise.
This was
Thanks.
fun.